Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Olivine Raiders going up against the Laverre Constrictors, and as they're starting out with their Eternal Time and Celestic Dream decks respectively, let's have a look at this tale of the tape as the Olivine Raiders are in their debut season, which means technically they are the only team in the PokeType League TCG to have never suffered a defeat in a series, as they are 3-0 currently this season, but the Laverre Constrictors are coming off an impressive win over the reigning champions, and they want to be the first team to take down the metal decks. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the metal decks? Will it be the psychic decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And it was that Celestic Dream deck that flipped the heads, and they're going to move one of their two Togepie's into the active spot with one of their two unknowns onto the bench, and we can see that Cresselia in hand as well. It is the Dialga from the Eternal Time deck going into the active spot for the Raiders, and they've got the Armor Fossil and the Shieldon already in hand, as it is already the Togetic being pulled for the Constrictors. Now they cannot evolve on the first turn, but these unknowns with that check ability does allow them to see, as we can see now, they are looking at the top card of their deck. They can also check the top card of the opposing side, but they have not done that yet, and they know that the Professor's Research will be pulled next as the X-Speed is pulled for the Olivine Raiders. They've got their own Professor's Research, which they are going to use immediately to thin that deck, get in an Adamant and a Bastiodon, so they've already got the full Bastiodon line, which has been very impressive so far this season with that guarded grill. And they are going to move that Rocky Helmet as well onto the Dialga, so it can return 20 damage if it takes damage from the opposing Pokemon. So this may make the Constrictors reluctant to go on the offensive with this Togepi, as they are going to play that Professor's Research immediately. That we knew they were getting. They get the Drifloon and they get the Cynthia, so they need that Togekiss as soon as possible. And they can say that they'll get the Giant Cape next, so no Togekiss just yet, but they're looking at their second Togepi, and they are going to move that onto the bench. They may want to use that Togetic to set up the bench instead of that active Togepi, who is getting its first energy, and that Togetic, who only requires 1 energy, they still move it onto the active spot as well. So immediately they're going on the offensive with this Fairy Wind. It does do 40 damage, keeping in mind it is weak to the metal decks as well. It does get that return 20 damage from the Rocky Helmet, as the second Dialga has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders here, and the active Dialga with that Time Mash needing 3 energies does get its second, but the Shieldon is online one more turn, and that Bastiodon will be on the bench. There is that Giant Cape that we're expecting from that next turn. That Time Mash, keep in mind it does do 100 damage, it will do 120 to the Togetic, but it is a coin flip, but the coin flip determines whether or not it can be used on the following turn, as the check from the unknown does reveal that the next Pokemon being pulled for the Constrictors is a Drifblim. And they're thinking of moving another energy onto the Togetic, which would be a very questionable choice because it cannot outlast a hit from that Dialga. But now they're hovering over the Cresselia, and that is where it'll go with that Moonlight Gain. Does 50 damage, requires a second energy though, but they're continuing on the offensive with the Fairy Wind, taking the Dialga down to 40 health. It does return that 20 damage once again, but again, the Raiders can get that third energy onto it as they do pull the Bronzong. No Bronzor in hand just yet, but that Bastiodon does leave the hand to go onto the bench with that Guarded Grill ability. That is a coin flip. Whenever Bastiodon takes damage, a coin flip, if heads, reduces that damage by 100, as the Time Mash takes Togetic off the table, and the coin flip is a tail, so Dialga will not be able to go on the offensive in the next turn, as they take their first point in this game 1 of our best of 3 series. Now regardless of that coin flip though, the Constrictors have moved the Cresselia into the active spot. They pull the Drifblim, again going for another check of their own deck to reveal the Pokeball that will be pulled next. And they do have a Drifloon in hand who they are going to move onto the bench as well. But this Cresselia, only requiring 1 more energy, does first get the Giant Cape to increase its health by an additional 20. Now this Moonlight Gain will normally restore health by 20, but it hasn't taken any damage. This Moonlight Gain 50 is enough to take the Dialga off the board, and that Rocky Helmet will return 20 damage, but that healing comes into effect before that Rocky Helmet takes place, so it is not going to cure that damage from that Rocky Helmet. But we have a level playing field, 1 point between both these two sides now. And it is that Bastiodon with no energy on it just yet. It does require 3, but the second Dialga does get moved onto the bench because the Raiders do not want to lose their active Pokemon with no benched Pokemon. And it is the Bastiodon getting its first energy. The Pokeball now being pulled for the Constrictors. And they do play that immediately, getting a basic Pokemon that is revealed to be a Drifloon out of their deck. And there is another Cresselia in there somewhere as well, but the check is going to once again see what is at the top of the Constrictors Celestic Dream deck, and it's the second Drifloon. That one does require 2 energy to do 60 damage, whereas the one they have in hand does only require 1 energy. This could determine whether or not they want to evolve that bench Drifloon just yet, but they are going to go for the Moonlight Gain, and this time it will restore the 20 health. But first, the coin flip is a Tails from the Raiders, so it will also take the 50 damage, does that Bastiodon. And there is that health of Cresselia being restored back to full as the second Armor Fossil has been pulled for the Raiders. They immediately move it onto the bench, knowing they've got that shield on in hand as well. It can do 50 damage, it has 100 health of its own. And still that active Bastiodon cannot go on the offensive, but that second Drifloon has been pulled for the Constrictors. Once again, they're going for the check. We still have that Togepi on bench, and we can see it will be a Togekiss being pulled, but they don't have a Togetic in hand anymore. It is in that discard pile as that second Drifloon is now on the bench. It does require 2 energy. The Moonlight Gain once again from the Cresselia. That coin flip is a Tails from the Eternal Time deck. So the Bastiodon takes another 50 damage, bringing it down to 60 health. And the Raiders pull their second Bastiodon that they're hoping to get online. This is not the quickest deck to get online, but fortunately with that guarded grill ability, it normally allows them that time to set up as they need. And the Headbang, 80 damage onto the Cresselia, bringing it down to 50 health. The Constrictors pull the Togekiss. They need to think about how they want to approach this. That Drifblim on the bench can take out that Bastiodon if it's a tail flip from the Olivine Raiders. And once again, they're checking their own deck, revealing the second Togekiss waiting to be pulled, but they need the Togetic if they want to get that Togekiss online. And they are hovering over that Drifblim, getting its second energy. It can go on the offensive, it does do 60 damage. That is if they want to retreat the Cresselia, because it cannot outlast another hit from the Bastiodon. But they are going for the Moonlight Gain. After giving it some thought in the Raiders, they can flip ahead, and they are successful. This will not prevent the Cresselia from restoring its health though. It does do 0 damage to the Bastiodon, but it only brings its own health up to 70, and it's the Giant Cape being pulled for the Raiders, which they immediately move onto the Bastiodon. This will keep it safe from that benched Drifblim, which is fantastic for the Raiders, but that could be a crucial error for the Laverre Constrictors in this first game. And as we always say, this is a best of 3 series, but regardless of the outcome of the first 2 games, we still play our third game because it does count towards the leaderboard, and the Bastiodon takes that second point for the Raiders by wiping that Cresselia off the board. And we now see that Drifblim moving into the active spot. The second Togekiss has been pulled as they continue to check their deck. Are they going to check the opposing side? They have not done that once this season, and it stays that way, but they will be pulling the Togetic in the next turn, so they do set up that Togepi with its second energy, because Togekiss only requires 2 energies. They're looking at that second Drifblim as they move the Drifloon onto the bench. This Balloon Strike, 60 damage onto the Bastiodon, but the Bastiodon has 80 health now, and still that guarded grill does have to come into play. The Raiders flip aheads as well, so the Drifblim does nothing to the Bastiodon, which allows it to come back to the Raiders as they pull their first Bronzor. They've had that Bronzor in hand for some time now, and they've still got the Adamant as the second Bastiodon does get its second energy, and the headbanging continues from the Bastiodon. Drifblim left with only 20 health remaining. And there is the Togetic coming online for the Laverre Constrictors. That Togekiss 1 turn away. The Constrictors just need to not make a mistake though, because if the Raiders get another point, they will take game 1. They're going for another check. They need to not rush any of this, and they can see it's the Professor's research that they will be pulling next. And this active Drifblim only has a 1 energy retreat cost, so they are going to bring it back to the bench, moving their second Drifblim with 90 health into the active spot. That Gust will come into play, but the Raiders flip a Tails this time. This is what the Constrictors need. This is going to buy them a bit of time. It gets 40 damage. Bastiodon has only 40 health remaining now, and they pull the Iono. They could throw in a bit of a haywire for the Constrictors' plans here. The Raiders are going to move the Bronzong onto the active spot. They've got the Adamant they're going to play instead of the Iono, so they want to reduce the damage that the Bastion takes from this Drifblim, potentially. But first the Headbang, leaving Drifblim with only 10 health remaining. The Constrictors, though, they have the Togekiss, they have the Professor's Research, and now it is time to determine if they want to use the Cynthia or if they want to use that Professor's Research. The Togekiss has so much power that first time it hits, it does do 60 damage, so it can do enough damage to the Bastiodon to take it off the board. As the check reveals the Cresselia will be next, they do retreat that active Drifblim, and here is that Overdrive Smash from the Togekiss. Again, it does 60 damage. They're looking at the Cynthia, who does add an additional 50, but after the first turn that the Togekiss hits this Overdrive Smash, every consecutive one does 120 damage. So that is huge because it can actually take out a Bastiodon with a Cynthia in one turn. The Constrictors are thinking about whether or not to go with the Professor's Research or the Cynthia. They are very torn here, going through their emotions. They keep looking at the Cynthia. That would guarantee practically that they could get this Bastiodon off the board. Only though if that Guarded Grill is not a head flip for the Olivine Raiders, and they are probably weighing up the options with that. So they're going to go with the Professor's Research. Instead, they get the Cresselia, they get the second Cynthia. The second Cynthia in hand could be crucial because this Overdrive Smash, they need a Tails flipped, and the Raiders get the Tails. The Constrictors are going to get their second point, so this next Overdrive Smash will do 120 damage, plus the Cynthia, it can do a maximum of 170 damage. This game too could come down to a coin flip, all about this Guarded Grill of the Bastiodon, who is now in that active spot. They pull their second Bronzong. That is not what they're concerned with right now. They are thinking about where to move this Metal Energy though, and they do go with the Bronzong that's on the bench that has the Psychic, the Headbang, 80 damage to the Togekiss, bringing it down to 60 health. Sorry, bringing it down to 40 health because of that weakness coming into play. But this is the moment for the Constrictors. They need to flip. Sorry, they need the Raiders to flip a Tails. Could do 170 damage. It will wipe the Bastiodon off the board. It'll come down to a coin flip on the part of the Raiders though. And here it is, this Overdrive Smash, the coin flip from the Raiders, and it is a heads. The Bastiodon will be safe. It's still going to take 70 damage because it reduces the damage by 100. But again, that is not good for the Constrictors because this Togekiss is in elimination range of this Bastiodon. They're not worried about the energy. They're going straight in for that third point and the win in game one, as they're looking to keep their undefeated streak alive here in Season A2 of the PokeType League TCG. But as we have a quick table reset between these two sides, a massive coin flip between these two, it is the Constrictors going first in game 2 with this red chain deck, and we can see the Mesprit in hand that they move into the active spot. The Raiders have the Skarmory with that Metal Arms move, and I do not know why that is called Metal Arms. It should be called Metal Wings, but here we go. And already the Duskull has been pulled for the Constrictors. They've got the Cyrus and the Pokemon Communication, but they've got the full Duskull line in hand. This is good for the Constrictors to start off game 2 as the Raiders pull the potion. We can see the Magneton and the Lumberry, and if this Skarmory has a Pokemon tool, which is what the Lumberry is attached to it, this Metal Arms goes from doing 20 damage to 50 damage, which is going to take the Mesprit down to only 20 health remaining. It can get taken off the board very quickly. The Raiders want to try and get a quick second win here to win the series, but it is the Professor's Research being pulled for the Constrictors as well, and they are going to play that immediately here, getting the Pokeball, and they get the Pokemon Center Lady. That will not be enough though to restore the health of Mesprit above that 50 line, as the second Mesprit is pulled thanks to that Pokeball, and they have the Pokemon Communication as the Dusclops is now online for this red chain deck. They are going up against the Stark Mountain deck as the Raiders want a second clean sweep in a row. They want this second win though more than anything, just to keep that series clear record alive, as again they've not lost the series yet this season. That Pokemon Communication sending the second Mesprit into the deck, and it is the Uxie being pulled out as Dusclops now has its first energy as well. The Raiders do pull their Giant Cape. They can't put it on the Skarmory though. Only one Pokemon tool can be attached at a time, but they do have the Adamant as they get a second energy onto the Skarmory, and it is going to wipe this Mesprit off the board, doing another 50 damage. and it is the early lead for the Raiders in this game too, but they've only got the one active Pokemon, and if they lose that with no bench, they lose the game automatically. So it is possible to get more points and still lose. It's possible to do more damage and still lose as the Constrictors pull their Rocky Helmet. They have the Dust Noir online. It does require 3 energy though for it to do that 70 damage. But we see the Rocky Helmet being put onto the Uxie. This may make the Raiders a little hesitant on wanting to do damage to the Uxie, but they've got those potions in hand as well, as the Uxie is going to go for the Mind Boost that does 20 damage to the Skarmory, trying to bring it down even quicker. It can't attach any additional energy that would be generated from that Mind Boost either, because it only works on an Azelf and a Mesprit. But the Raiders going to play their own Pokemon communication. They send the Magneton back into the deck and they get the second Skarmory, so they're able to get another basic Pokemon, and fantastic for them, it is a Skarmory, and they've got another Pokemon tool in the Giant Cape in hand that they do move on to it. And they use one of their 2 potions in hand on the Skarmory to get it back to full strength, as they're trying to keep Skarmory out of elimination range from that Dust Noir that is on the bench. Another Metal Arms, 50 damage to the Uxie. That Rocky Helmet does do 20 damage back, however. And it is the second Dust Noir being pulled, as that active Dust Noir does get its second energy. They use the potion on the Uxie. This will get it back up to 50 health, but that remaining damage, Dust Noir does have the ability to move that damage to it, and with that Shadow Void ability. So Uxie will be restored back to full strength, whereas Dust Noir will be brought down from 130 down to 110 health. And here's that Mind Boost continuing to chip away at this active Skarmory as well. And the Raiders and this Stark Mountain deck are able to pull out the Magnemite here, so they do get a first energy onto it, which is good. Now they've got 3 basic Pokemon on the board, and there's another 20 health being restored for the Skarmory, who is going to be very easy to be eliminated by the Dust Noir, but instead they go with the switch. They switch in that second Skarmory, who has 100 health now thanks to that Giant Cape, and it will do 50 damage to the Uxie. It will get the recoil damage from that Rocky Helmet, doing 20 damage back to it, but this Skarmory will take 20 less health thanks to that Adamant that was played. The second Dusclops has been pulled as well for the Constrictors, and they can do 70 damage with that Dust Noir. But instead they're going with the Mind Boost, and the Mind Boost won't do anything to the Skarmory, so they're willing to give up this second point, as that active Skarmory can take the Uxie off the board. But the Raiders have also just pulled a Pokeball. They move a second energy onto the Magnemite, and then they play the Pokeball, and they are going to get the Heatran, who does require 3 energy. It's interesting that they played that Metal Energy. They may have just rushed that move. But regardless, with the Metal Arms, they do take that Uxie off the board. The Skarmory is brought down to 60 health, which makes it a very easy target for this Dust Noir, who is going to look to try and turn this entire match around to make sure that the Constrictors can take this to a game 3. And that Dust Noir now in the active spot, as the Giant Cape has just been pulled as well for the Constrictors, and they've got that Cyrus that can pull a benched Pokemon that's taken damage into the active spot, and that Skarmory that is on the bench is at 60 health, having taken damage 4th energy, but that onto the Dust Noir, but it goes with the Devour Soul to take that first Skarmory off the board, and the Constrictors get a point here as they're trying to bring this match all the way back. However, the Raiders aren't worried about Skarmory getting pulled into the active spot. They move it there themselves, playing the Professor's Research that they just pulled. They get the second Magnemite. They get the Magnezone. They need a Magneton though, and they had one of them in hand earlier that they were willing to give up for that Pokemon communication that got them the second Skarmory. The Metal Arms, 50 damage onto the Dust Noir, being brought down to 80 health after Heatran just got its first of 3 required energy. And that Duskull was just pulled for the Constrictors, moved onto the bench, and we can see another Dusclops and Dust Noir in hand for the Constrictors. The Devour Soul once again taking a Skarmory off of the board, and we have a game here, because that next point will determine whether we go to a game 3 to determine our winner, or if we go to a game 3 to see who can just add more points to their leaderboard. get a small time warning as the Raiders are thinking about how they want to approach this. Those Magnemites could not outlast Dusknoir, so they're left with having to move Heatran into the active spot, who still requires 2 more energy, but the Raiders have just pulled their Rocky Helmet and they do move that onto the Heatran. They do get their second energy, and this is a very good play because Dusknoir does not have enough strength to take it off the board, but Heatran does 110 damage. The second Mesprit is pulled for the Constrictors, although that may be the first one because they did shift that early one back into the bench. That Dusclops is now online, getting its second energy, but it only has 90 health. And the Constrictors are limited on what they can do, and they do go with the Devour Soul 70 damage onto the Heatran. That Rocky Helmet returning 20 health to the Dusknoir, but the Raiders getting their third energy onto the Heatran, 110 damage. There is 20 recoil damage for the Heatran from this steel tackle, but this gets the win for the Olivine Raiders as they ensure that they have started this season with 4 wins and 0 losses when it comes to series. But now the Constrictors need to try and bring it back here in Game 3. They need to try and maximize their points and maximize their damage, because that does count towards the leaderboard as they are going second against this Raiders Mining Melancholy deck, and they've got the Mawils and the Registeels in hand, plus that Revelry. It is the Giratina for the Constrictors and this Distortion World deck going into the active spot. We've also got the Pokeball and the Professor's Research. And the Raiders, having just pulled their own Pokeball, pull a Varoom out of their deck, and there is a second Varoom in there, but they've got all their other basic Pokemon already in hand, and that Varoom goes immediately onto the bench. As the Ghastly has been pulled for the Laverre Constrictors, they immediately play the Pokeball, and they are going to get a Clefairy, which is great because they've got a Clefable plus a Gengar in hand. This Professor's Research, they want the Haunter. They get a Clefairy, they get the Haunter as well, and we haven't seen Gengar get to do too much this season as they're looking at that Hypno Blast that it can do. 70 damage, 2 energy, but it does put the opposing Pokemon to sleep straight away. The Ghastly and the Clefairy are now on the bench, and that Giratina gets its first of 3 required energy, but it has that Levitate ability. As long as there's some energy attached to it, its energy retreat cost goes down to 0. And the Revelry is now online, but the Mawile only requires 1 energy for that Iron Beam Breaker, 20 damage to the Giratina, as the Constrictors do pull the Rotom with that dash attack. It can do 20 damage to any of the opposing Pokemon, and the Haunter is online for the Constrictors. They're 1 turn away from having that Gengar online, and they've got the Clefable online as well, who does have a 3 energy cost requirement, but that Moonblast does 60 damage and reduces any income damage by 30. Could be 20, we might get corrected on that shortly. But it is the Giratina getting its second energy as well. It does do 70 damage with that Spooky Shot, but it does still require 1 more energy as the Professor's Research that was pulled for the Raiders played immediately. They get the 2x speeds. There's also got the Dawn in here now that does allow them to move an energy from their benched Pokemon to the active Pokemon. And another Iron Beam Breaker just chipping away here at the health of the Giratina. Do see that second Haunter being pulled, but it is the Gengar now online for the Constrictors, and the Giratina getting its 3rd energy. The Spooky Shot, 70 damage to wipe this Mawile off the board, and the Constrictors finally get a first point in this series. As we said, they're trying to bring it back here in this Game 3. They want to do what they can to contribute to the leaderboard after all the damage they've taken from the Olivine Raiders, who just pulled their second Revelry. The Registeel being moved onto the bench as there is a Registeel now in the active spot, and it is getting its second of 3 required energy for that Metal Claw that does do 90 damage. And the Constrictors have pulled their second Clefable. Now they do have that second Clefairy in hand, but they still haven't played it yet as they're continuing with the Spooky Shot, this time onto the Registeel, bringing it down to 40 health, who is at 110 health when it's at max HP. The Giant Cape being pulled by the Olivine Raiders, being moved. No, they think of moving it onto the Revelry, but they decide against it. They do get a 3rd energy on to the Registeel, and they're having a look at that Gengar. They're clearly concerned with that at the moment. It's got 1 energy on it. They take the Giratina off the board. Surely that Gengar is coming into the active spot for the Constrictors right now. It only needs 1 more energy, and there it is with that Hypno Blast coming into place. The Team Rocket Grunt being pulled for the Constrictors. It can get the energy off of the Registeel. but they may not want to do that right now because they know they can get this Registeel off the board with this Hypno Blast doing 70 damage. And the Constrictors are only 1 point away from taking game 3 here to try and bring it back. As we said, they're trying to reduce the damage count and the point count that goes onto the leaderboard. That's why these game 3s are so important, especially if a team loses in those first 2 games. And it is that second Registeel being moved into the active spot for the Raiders. As they pull in Adamant, we've seen these a few times, they can reduce damage by 20 from incoming Pokemon. But first the Giant Cape onto the Registeel as well, taking it up to 130 health. And with this Adamant, this will contribute, it will make the Gengar need to do at least 3 Hypno Blasts to take the Registeel off the board. And they've got those 2 X speeds in hand, they move them all while onto the bench, but they get a first energy onto the Revelry instead of the Registeel, so they're clearly setting up for the Registeel to be retreated. As the second Ghastly has been pulled for the Constrictors, it gets its first energy as well, but they don't have the second Gengar in hand yet. As the Hypno Blast continues, 50 damage onto the Registeel, it will put it to sleep. The Raiders need to flip ahead. And that they do, so the Registeel will wake back up as the second Varoom has been pulled for the Raiders as well. That Revelry on the bench does get its second of 3 required energy. The Spinning Drift does do 70 damage as it goes back over to the Constrictors. They pull the Rocky Helmet, they can put this on the Gengar, and we've seen that Rocky Helmet plenty of times in this series so far. And the Ghastly gets its second energy with the Haunter being moved onto it now as well. They still have the Clefairy and the Rotom in hand. Another Hypno Blast. This is going to bring the Registeel down to 10 health. They do put it to sleep. They want it to stay asleep so it can't retreat, but it is the heads being flipped by the Olivine Raiders. They are free to retreat this Registeel. And that is immediately what they're going to do. They can use the potion on the Registeel as well, but they can retreat it. It is a 2 energy retreat cost with those 2 X speeds. This allows them to do it for free, so they don't have to worry about energy being on it. They can move the Revelry into the active spot, and they can get a metal energy onto it. And that Spinning Drift, if they flip aheads after doing it, it will prevent all damage done to Revelry in the next turn, plus effects, and they've just halved the health of that Gengar, and they flip a tail, so this will not protect the Revelry from taking in incoming damage from this Gengar. But the Constrictors first are going to pull the Pokeball. They can get another basic Pokemon out of their deck, and it is going to be revealed to be the second Rotom, again with that dash attack as well, that can target benched Pokemon. And that is actually crucial because it only requires 1 energy. They move it onto the bench, and that means that that Registeel is not safe, and the Constrictors are clearly well aware of that because they move the Rotom into the active spot, and with this dash attack they can target that Registeel. The Raiders made a crucial error. They did not use that potion, and that has cost them a clean sweep in this series. Unfortunately for the Constrictors, they were able to get 1 back here that they desperately needed as they stay in 8th place, and next round they're going up against the Holon Allies, whereas for the Raiders they still sit on top undefeated, and next round they're going up against the Cinnabar Blazers. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below who you thought was the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.